The winter around Fort Captain was brutal. Snow blanketed the ground like a thick, white quilt, and the biting winds howled through the trees, making every soldier shiver. The air was so cold that it felt like needles pricking at their skin. With temperatures dropping far below freezing, frostbite became a constant threat for anyone who ventured outside. Soldiers, dressed in heavy woolen uniforms, often found themselves struggling against nature's harsh grip. Their fingers and toes were particularly vulnerable, and many had already suffered painful injuries from the cold. Frostbite could turn a simple patrol into a life-or-death situation, where minutes outside could mean permanent damage or even death. As the days passed, the fort became increasingly tense. Men huddled around small fires, sharing stories to keep their spirits up while their bodies fought against the icy chill. They knew that frostbite was not just an inconvenience, it could lead to amputation if not treated quickly. Each soldier was aware of the dangers lurking outside those fort walls and the severe consequences of a harsh winter. In this unforgiving setting, hope seemed as distant as the warm sun. It was within this icy world that a desperate situation would soon unfold, one that would challenge both courage and beliefs. In this challenging environment, three main characters would soon find their fates intertwined. The first was the Lakota healer, a wise and skilled man named Tashunka. He had spent years learning the ancient ways of his people, using plants and natural remedies to heal wounds and illnesses. Tashunka was deeply connected to the land, believing it held the power to restore life. Despite facing prejudice from the soldiers, he remained committed to helping those in need, driven by a strong sense of duty toward all living beings. Then there was Marshal Thompson, a dedicated soldier known for his bravery in battle. He had always put his men first but now found himself in a vulnerable position due to frostbite. As he fought through the pain, his thoughts drifted to his family back home, fueling his desire to survive this ordeal. His reputation as a strong leader was at stake as he faced this life-threatening challenge. Finally, Fort Captain Reynolds commanded respect but struggled with his own fears and prejudices. Torn between duty to protect his men and a growing realization of the healer's potential help, Reynolds felt the weight of tough decisions pressing down on him. In this icy world of conflict and desperation, each character would face their own trials that could change their lives forever. On a frigid patrol, Marshal Thompson and a small group of soldiers ventured farther from Fort Captain than they should have. As the wind howled around them, they found themselves caught in a sudden snowstorm that obscured their path. Visibility dropped, turning the landscape into a blinding white blur. Despite their efforts to press on, the cold crept in relentlessly. Hours passed as the storm raged, and it wasn't long before Thompson felt an alarming numbness in his fingertips and toes. Ignoring it at first, he pressed onward, determined to protect his men and fulfill their mission. However, by the time they returned to the fort, it was clear that his refusal to heed the warning signs had taken a toll. His fellow soldiers quickly noticed that he was stumbling and shivering more than usual. Alarm filled their faces as they helped him inside. They could see the pale skin of his hands even through layers of fabric. Realizing just how severe his condition had become, they sprang into action, gathering blankets and hot water in hopes of warming him up before permanent damage set in. It was an urgent race against time as every second counted in saving their brave marshal from further harm. As news of the marshal's dire condition spread through the nearby Lakota camp, Tashunka felt a deep sense of urgency. He had been meditating by the fire when the winds carried whispers of trouble from Fort Captain. Knowing that frostbite could lead to serious harm, he quickly gathered his medicinal herbs and supplies. His heart raced as he thought about what might happen if he didn't act fast. Navigating through the snow-covered terrain, Tashunka used his knowledge of the land to find a path toward the fort. He moved with purpose, aware of each plant and root that could aid in healing. Along the way, he gathered willow bark for its pain-relieving properties and other natural remedies that could help restore warmth to frozen limbs. Upon reaching Fort Captain, he was met with wary glances from the soldiers guarding the entrance. However, Tashunka's determination shone through as he explained his purpose. With a calming presence, he assured them that he had the skills to help their marshal. The healer's knowledge of traditional medicine was unmatched, and with time running short, he was ready to prove that mercy could bridge even the widest divides in this wintry landscape. Inside Fort Captain, tension crackled in the air as Captain Reynolds paced restlessly. The news of Marshal Thompson's frostbite spread like wildfire, igniting a flurry of emotions within him. He felt an overwhelming sense of frustration mixed with fear. On one hand, he knew the Marshal's life depended on immediate medical attention, on the other, he was grappling with the implications of allowing a Lakota healer to step inside the fort's walls. What if it was seen as high treason? The captain's mind raced with thoughts of how such an act could undermine his authority and provoke backlash from his men. He envisioned their reactions, whispers of betrayal and outrage echoing through the barracks. Would they see him as weak for accepting help from someone they had been instructed to view with suspicion? As the wind howled outside, Reynolds struggled to reconcile his duty to protect his soldiers with the desperate need to save Thompson's life. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, reminding him that time was running out for the Marshal. Torn between tradition and compassion, he faced an impossible decision that could change everything for him and his men in this icy world of conflict. Captain Reynolds stood at the window, watching the snow swirl outside, lost in a storm of his own thoughts. He knew that time was running out for Marshal Thompson, and the healer's knowledge could be the key to saving him. Yet, allowing Tushunka to enter the fort felt like an act of betrayal against his men, who had been raised to view Lakota people with suspicion and fear. A wave of doubt washed over him. Was he really willing to risk his reputation and the trust of his soldiers to save one man? The captain's mind raced with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he had an obligation to protect his troops, they were his responsibility, and their loyalty depended on his leadership. On the other hand, he felt a growing realization that compassion was also a form of strength. Deep down, he understood that every soldier was someone's son or brother, deserving of care regardless of the circumstances. His heart pounded as he paced back and forth. What if Tushunka's knowledge could truly help? Could this healing act showcase a shift away from old prejudices? The captain was caught in a profound dilemma, knowing that embracing mercy might redefine not only one life but also the relationship between worlds divided by history and distrust. As Tushunka approached Fort Captain, he sensed the palpable tension in the air. Soldiers eyed him warily, their military training steeped in distrust of the Lakota. Rumors and stories had painted his people as enemies, fostering a deep-seated fear that clouded their judgment. With each step, Tushunka felt the weight of those misconceptions pressing down on him. Inside the fort, whispers spread quickly. Some soldiers believed that accepting Tushunka's help might bring bad luck or even betrayal. They recalled tales of conflicts from the past, where misunderstandings led to violence and suffering on both sides. This fear turned into hostility, as a few soldiers openly questioned the captain's decision to consider the healer's assistance. Tushunka, aware of their discomfort, remained calm. He understood that change is often met with resistance, but he was determined to showcase not only his skills but also his desire for peace. He knew that healing was not just about remedies, it involved bridging gaps and building trust. As he prepared to enter the fort and offer his aid, he hoped that perhaps this act of kindness could challenge their prejudices and pave the way for understanding between two worlds long divided by fear and conflict. Tushunka entered the room where Marshal Thompson lay, his frostbitten hands and feet wrapped in blankets but still showing signs of pale skin. The healer wasted no time. He carefully unpacked his satchel filled with herbs and remedies he had gathered from nature. First, he took out dried willow bark, known for its pain-relieving properties. Crushing it between his fingers, he brewed it in warm water to create a soothing tea to help ease the Marshal's pain. Next, Tushunka focused on the frostbite itself. He reached for a handful of yarrow leaves, renowned for their healing ability and natural warmth. Gently, he mashed the leaves into a paste before applying it to Thompson's affected areas, hoping to increase blood flow and stimulate healing. As he worked, Tushunka softly spoke in a calming tone, encouraging the Marshal to breathe deeply and visualize warmth flooding back into his body. Finally, he wrapped Thompson's limbs with soft cloths imbued with a mixture of warming herbs including ginger and thyme. These would not only protect the Marshal's skin but also create a gentle heat that would aid in recovery. With each careful movement, Tushunka infused his act with respect and intention, embodying the belief that true healing requires both skill and compassion. As the hours passed, a palpable sense of tension filled the air within Fort Captain. Soldiers gathered outside the room where Tushunka worked, their anxiety evident as they exchanged worried glances. Then, a murmur broke through the crowd when they heard a faint groan from Marshal Thompson. The healer had been tending to him diligently, and now it seemed his efforts were beginning to bear fruit. Suddenly, Thompson's eyes fluttered open, revealing a spark of awareness that had been absent before. As he shifted slightly, the warmth from the herbal wrap seemed to seep into his frozen limbs, igniting a flicker of hope among the onlookers. Tushunka, noticing the marshal's signs of life, encouraged him to focus on breathing deeply and envisioning warmth spreading through his body. Captain Reynolds stood at the doorway, witnessing this moment of transformation. For the first time, doubt began to fade from his mind as he observed how Tushunka's methods were making a difference. The soldiers, once skeptical and fearful, began to murmur in awe at the healer's skill. This turning point not only revived Thompson but also sparked a shift in perception. Perhaps the Lakota healer was not an enemy after all, but a vital ally in their fight against nature's harsh grip. As Captain Reynolds continued to observe Tushunka's successful treatment of Marshal Thompson, a profound change began to stir within him. The Lakota healer, who had once represented fear and mistrust in the captain's eyes, now embodied compassion and skilled knowledge. Watching Thompson regain color and strength sparked a realization in Reynolds: mercy is not a sign of weakness but an act of bravery that can lead to healing, not just for individuals but for relationships between cultures. He thought back to countless battles fought not only against the elements but also against misunderstandings and prejudices that had festered over time. In that moment, standing at the threshold between past conflicts and future possibilities, Reynolds felt the heavy burden of duty lift slightly. Duty was not merely about protecting his men with force, it was also about making choices that could foster unity and respect. Feeling renewed strength from this insight, he stepped closer to the door, ready to express his gratitude to Tushunka. The healing process extended beyond Thompson's physical state, it began to heal the rift between their worlds as well. The captain's heart swelled with hope that this experience could lead them toward a new understanding, one built on shared humanity and compassion in the face of adversity. As the days passed, Marshal Thompson's recovery became a beacon of hope for everyone at Fort Captain. The once pale skin on his hands and feet regained color, and his strength returned thanks to Tushunka's dedicated care. The soldiers watched in awe as their marshal, who had faced death from frostbite, now stood tall once more, exemplifying resilience and gratitude. Moved by Thompson's recovery, the soldiers began to openly express their appreciation for Tushunka, acknowledging the healer's knowledge and skill. Conversations that had once been filled with skepticism transformed into discussions of respect and cooperation. The animosity that had existed between the Lakota and the fort's men started to dissolve, replaced by a budding friendship founded on shared experiences. Captain Reynolds took the lead in this new relationship, inviting Tushunka to share more of his healing practices with the soldiers. He encouraged his men to learn from the healer's wisdom, promoting understanding that would extend beyond the cold winter they had faced together. This event marked a profound turning point not only for Thompson's life but for both communities, paving a path toward collaboration and mutual respect that promised to endure long after the winter's grip had faded. As the winter drew to a close, the experience at Fort Captain left a lasting impact on everyone involved. The soldiers learned that true bravery is not only shown in battle but also in the willingness to embrace compassion and understanding. They discovered that healing extends beyond physical ailments, it involves mending relationships and breaking down barriers that have long divided them. Tushunka's dedication and skill demonstrated the power of traditional knowledge, reminding all that wisdom can come from unexpected sources. The soldiers began to appreciate the value of collaboration, recognizing that working together, despite their differences, could lead to stronger bonds and a more united community. Captain Reynolds reflected on how this journey had altered his views on duty and justice. He understood that leadership also means fostering an environment where respect thrives, allowing for new ideas and perspectives to take root. The fort became a symbol of hope, showing that even in the harshest conditions, kindness could prevail. As they moved forward, the soldiers and the Lakota community committed themselves to building a future defined by mutual respect, cooperation, and shared humanity, a legacy born from the depths of winter's struggle but shining bright with newfound promise.